My name is Rebecca Bond and I'm an associate here at Burkitt's LLP. I'm based in Burkitt's commercial property team. We have a number of offices here at Burkitt's, but I'm based in our Norwich office. As I'm sure you can tell from the title, I'm here to speak to you today about my career and my journey to becoming a solicitor. There are traditional routes to becoming a solicitor. I took a pretty traditional route, but I had to kind of go about it a different way. That sometimes you actually have to think outside the box in order to achieve your goals. So I always wanted to be a solicitor. When I was 12 years old, I was actually involved in a serious car accident, and that really opened my eyes to the legal world. I wasn't really aware of kind of legal proceedings. I wasn't really aware there was a difference between criminal and civil proceedings. So having been part of that journey, for both there being a criminal aspect to the accident and also a civil side, it really got to open my eyes. I always knew relatively early on what I wanted to do. I hadn't really made a decision between a barrister or a solicitor by that point, but I certainly knew I wanted to be involved in the legal world. So when it came to A-levels, I chose law and subjects that would complement my law A-level. I then applied to go to university at the UEA in 2008. Now, some of you may know, but that was when we had the recession. So prior to my time going to university, it was a case that there were enough training contracts for everybody to go, pretty much for everyone to go around. So you went to university and we were pretty confident that by the end of it, you'd be able to get a training contract. However, in 2008, obviously was the recession. So, at the time we didn't realise there would perhaps be difficulties in getting training contracts. So started off university anyway, really enjoyed it, went through my first year, got to second year where you could start applying for vacation schemes at law firms. And I was actually really struggling to get a firm to give me a vacation scheme. So it got to a point where I thought, well, what would I get if I went and did a vacation scheme? I would get exposure in a law firm, I would get work experience, and actually probably hopefully would make me decide whether this is actually the career I want to pursue or not. So I thought, well, what should I do if I can't get a vacation scheme? I would try and get some work experience. So I was able to secure some work experience in a relatively large law firm that was based in Chelmsford. So what I did is I would commute every day for 2 weeks and get some really valuable experience. I worked in their litigation team, and it was really interesting, it was really insightful, and I think that definitely for me cemented that I wanted to be a solicitor. Now, it then got to my final year of university where the tradition was everybody starts applying for training contracts and you hopefully get your training contract secured before the end of your final year. You would then go start your LPC, finish your LPC, and then you start your training contract. And at the time, that was the kind of traditional route that people took. So I started applying for training contracts. It took a lot of time in doing those applications, and I was finding I wasn't getting a lot of responses from firms, or I wasn't being successful, is probably a better way to put it. And it got to a point where I was thinking, well, is even the law for me? Is that the route I want to go down? I did want to be a solicitor, but I thought, well, I know that perhaps I could do work in other industries that are perhaps similar to the law and has similar kind of that work environment, but perhaps doesn't have the title solicitor. So at the time I started applying for graduate scheme jobs, and I actually applied for 2 graduate scheme jobs with Aviva, working in various different insurance sectors. I was lucky enough to get an interview for their assessment centres, and it was at the same time I had also started thinking, well, perhaps I need to be applying for other industries which actually have legal professionals in them. So, for example, your local authorities, your big corporate entities, your Microsofts, your NHSs, the big companies and other entities and companies that have solicitors in-house. So it was at this time I applied to a local insurance company who had an in-house legal team. And I knew about them through a friend actually who worked there, and she had said to me, look, we have a legal team, we have a trainee solicitor at the moment within the team, we have a number of Silex qualified and qualifying people, and we also have legal assistants and paralegals. So perhaps you maybe try my place and apply there. So I did. I made an application. I applied. Went for the interview. The interview was just before I had the assessment centres with Aviva. So I had the interview and then I didn't hear back, but I thought, not a problem, I'll still go to the assessment centres. And then after that, I actually did hear back from them and I was successful in getting a training contract at the insurance company. So the good thing I found with the insurance company and working for them as opposed to maybe a traditional law firm is they were, for me, a lot more relaxed in terms of kind of what I needed to do in order to become a solicitor. So for example, they were happy for me to do my training contract at the same time as my LPC. And I finished my exams and the next week I started working for them as a paralegal over the summer. So that was really good to kind of get my foot in the door, get to know what I was doing before I started my training contract in the September at the same time as my LPC. And I could kind of hit the ground running when it came to September. Doing my LPC and my training contract at the same time, I found was really beneficial because what I was doing was I was actually working in the industry, or some of the industries that actually I was learning about at the same time. So I kind of felt that I did have a slight step up in that I'd experienced some of the things that I was learning, that I was talking about. They were incredibly flexible in terms of kind of my work-life balance as well. So I went to university one day a week and then I worked the rest of the time at the insurance company, and they would give me half a day off during term time to study in the office, which was brilliant as well, because although doing a training contract and your LPC at the same time is good, it means you kind of get things going and you kind of get the ball rolling quicker. It does mean that you have no life, so it's incredibly hard work. Your evenings, your weekends, they're taken up with studying because the rest of the time you're working or you're at university. But my part-time LPC was 2 years, and in the grand scheme of things, what's 2 years out of your life? It's not really anything. To get to where you want to go, it's worth the hard work, and I thought it was worth the hard work and worth the commitment, and it did pay off ultimately. So that was kind of my experience there. When you perhaps have a training contract at a more traditional firm, you tend to do kind of seats, so you'll do a seat in one area of law, in one department, and then you'll rotate throughout the firm doing different areas of law. Whereas within the insurance company I was at, we were only able to do kind of 2 area of laws at once. So I would do litigation. It was at a time where we could do litigation in-house, and also kind of company corporate law as well. We did lots of agreements with other insurance bodies, with brokers, things like that. And it meant that just, instead of kind of doing a traditional, right, you're working in litigation for 3 to 6 months and then you're going over to corporate, or company law, it just meant that, I was doing a bit of everything day to day. I had to do a certain amount of areas of law during my training contract, so I was actually seconded out to a private practice law firm that we had really good links with, and they were based in Manchester. And whilst I was there, I was able to do family law and employment law, and that was really good, and I had a really good time there. And for me, that really cemented the fact that actually I wanted to end up in private practice. As much as I loved working in-house and I loved working where I was working, I think ultimately I decided that, working in private practice was ultimately where I wanted to go. I then qualified as a solicitor, but I actually moved firms, so I qualified into a private practice high street firm, which was where I went to next. There are a number of alternatives to becoming a solicitor. Obviously, I've told you my kind of timeline in terms of how I qualified and where I qualified to becoming a solicitor, but the traditional routes of university, law degree, LPC, training contract, private practice, that's just one route. That there are many other routes. Become Silex qualified, and there's various routes for doing that. You can become a licensed conveyancer if you want to work in the conveyancing sector. You can become a temp or a secretary and work your way up. Similar to paralegal, you can go in as a paralegal once you've done your law degree, and just maybe see what everything's about, and whether it is perhaps the kind of the job you want to go for. I really do think that there is merit in getting your foot in the door somewhere, and just maybe getting a taste for what you want to do before you do it. I found that I've worked in a number of different areas of law, and it took me a good few years to actually find an area of law that I love and that I want to work in, which is what I have now. But I will say is that when I was applying for training contracts, what I was finding is that I was getting going up and competing against people who had already worked as paralegals and had already gained some experience. I really do think you can gain some very good experience as a paralegal, and whilst I was applying for these training contracts, going up against people who had had 3-4 years of paralegal experience, actually working in a profession, understanding how a law firm works, or understanding how whatever area of law they're working in works, really does, I think, put you one step ahead of everybody else, because you've got that experience, which you can then pull through with you within later life. That's not to say that you wouldn't necessarily get a training contract without that paralegal experience. I did, and lots of people I'm sure still do. I think that kind of getting some experience is really, really valuable. My advice really would be, and this doesn't necessarily relate just to law, this kind of goes over all areas, that you've really got to be determined if you want to be successful in what you do. You're going to need dedication, you're going to need motivation, you've got to be determined in order for you to be able to get there. You're going to get knockbacks, that's absolutely fine, that's absolutely normal, everybody does. There's going to be scary times, and you've got to be a lot of hard work, but it's all going to be worth it, and it really is all going to pay off if you carry on, continue to work hard. And if things aren't working out or you're struggling, then think outside the box. What can I do to get to where I want to go? If one route's not overly clear or you're struggling that way, right, well, how else can I perhaps get to where I want to go? Definitely think more laterally in your career, whatever it may be, if things aren't kind of working out your way. And I would certainly also say there is so much good that can come from networking and from telling people your goals, telling people what you want to achieve. You never know from speaking to somebody where that conversation may lead, who that person may know, who you may know within your network or whoever's network that may be able to help you either get some work experience, give you a reference, give you some advice, let you know what it's like working there. If those kind of skills are great for you to be building on now, it is, it can be awkward and uncomfortable speaking to somebody who you don't know or who you don't know very well. And I totally understand that. I've been there. I've had awkward, uncomfortable moments, but they're only moments, and they pass, and you move on. And actually, what you'll find is once you go out there and you start talking to people, asking people questions, you'll find that becomes easier and easier and easier to do. And you just never know what might come from it. I must say that there is a lot to doing that. And I'm not saying you need to go to everybody and tell everybody you meet that you want to do whatever career you've chosen. But there's no harm in just chatting to people, listening to them, and you can reciprocate the same help as well. There's a lot said for helping others, for networking yourself. You just never know what's going to happen from that. And I just do think that's really, really valuable, along with your determination and you thinking outside the box. Another piece of advice I would give you is just try to make yourself unique and make yourself stand out from the crowd. When you're going to, when you're applying for jobs, when you're in jobs, or even now in your any stage of your life and in your career, you can do something that makes you different, that makes you unique, but also something you enjoy as well. Don't just do something for the sake of, I think I should do this because it looks good. That's fine if you're happy to do that, but actually if you really enjoy it, you're really going to stand out and you are really going to excel doing something you really like doing. And I certainly have found throughout my career that doing something unique. I did quite a unique sport. I actually did karate. I do karate. I'm a black belt in karate, and I used to teach karate, and that certainly for me was very unique. When I was applying for jobs and I was going for job interviews, and throughout my whole life, having that really unique sport that I've always done, I've always loved, has really helped me progress, and it's certainly helped me from a young age when I was going for my kind of initial job interviews, and explaining that I'd had this leadership experience teaching adults and children and very young children karate, and also I'd excelled in that sport. Really was helped me to show off what I was capable of. And if you can find something unique and something interesting that you like doing and that you've achieved, whether that be a part-time job, sport, music, travelling, volunteering, you never know what's going to come from doing something. So doing something's better than nothing. That's always my view. And just try and make yourself stand out from the crowd. Thank you so much for listening today. If you have any questions or have any queries, please do feel free to get in touch with me. My details are below. Many thanks for listening, and stay safe.